Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. As some of you may or may not know, I recently produced a short movie in a week and I put it online. It's about an epic guy called the Samurai, pretty much. And he is just basically the portrayal of how epic a samurai can be. So he goes through the villagers talk about him. It's like, oh, the shogun must be mad to send a samurai. And then he gets around here, he sees the destruction, and then he climbs even higher. That's a bit I had to miss. And then he comes to here, he gets attacked by bandits and slays them just absolutely easily. And then he gets to the boss and just demolishes him, pretty much. And that's the movie. It was my first ever movie I made in Unreal, short movie. And in today's video, we're going to talk about 10 of the things that I found out in the sequencer that may or may not be helpful for you in the future. So let's get started. So when you're producing a short movie like this, there is absolutely going to be an insane amount of work put into it. There is for any size movie, and you'll have tons and tons of different things. Depending how you split it, your sequences could be really, really long. Luckily, mine were all about 50 seconds to a minute, but I managed to split mine up, or they could be minutes long. I remember a video once of them showing off some horror game in Unreal. I can't remember what it was. It was one where you made loads of decisions throughout it, and their sequences were just huge. But one of the key things that I wanted to go for with mine is I didn't want the typical animations that you get for free that look a bit glitchy. I wanted proper animations. I am fortunate enough to have access to a motion capture suit that I bought thanks to help with all the Patreons, so I do appreciate all of you and every single one of you. One thing I did is I recorded the vast majority of animations. One of the benefits of recording your own animations is you get access to root motion-based animations. You can get them with most paid animations as well, and the free ones typically don't have them from what I've seen. So like Mixamo doesn't have great root motion. But for example, if I come and find my samurai walk-in animation here, you'll see that he's walking like that, right? But the key difference is he is actually walking. So if I select the root, and you can see as I move it, see the red line there? That shows the path that he's moved. So he is physically moving. As opposed to other animations like this one I've got without any root motion, as you can see, he's just running on the spot. As you can see, the root's not moving. And the biggest difference with this is root motion allows you to realistically get the character's steps. So as the animation is moving, the character will move with it. So as you can see, each footstep moves it. Whereas if you just had a fixed value, say for movement speed, you'd have to time it up like that. Typically you see root motions in big AAA games where they've got realistic movement, and it really does help to sell it. And root motion, if you do have an animation that absolutely supports root motion, it's super simple to use in the sequencer to really give realism to your animations. All you do is open the animation, tick enable root motion. I've not done it on this one because I've done it on the retargeted versions. And then in your sequencer, if I select my samurai here, all you do is play the animations. So you can see if I go to the beginning of here and disable the fade track, you can see as the animation plays, he will physically walk to the location. And you can tell it's working because the capsule, annoyingly, in the sequencer stays there, but we'll come on to that later. But you can see he is actively moving into position. And then as he stands and looks, he'll walk again. And you'll see he is physically moving, which means you can give really nice speed and realism to the cutscene, so it doesn't look like he's kind of floating, which you may see when your character's running around. They'll sometimes look like they're a bit floaty. The only other thing with root motions is you do have to tell the sequencer it's a root motion based animation. And you really do just put your animation in and play it like that. But as you can see here, right on my boss fight, as the enemy has just died, I've got the same animation over and over and over and over again, right? You can't just place the animation right next to it, because then it's not going to sync up properly. What you have to do is go to the first frame of the new animation you've added. Then you have to right click on it, match this bone with the previous clip, and select the one you want to match. And what it'll do is Unreal will do all the calculations it needs to and says, hey, you started from here, carry on from this point, and then it carries on. You still do need a loopable animation. It's not going to chop the frames up and everything, but it helps you basically place the same animation over and over and over again. I don't have to deal with any character walking or anything like that. You can see just by playing it, he's just going to walk forwards, just like that. All in one smooth motion. You can't really tell where the animation splits if you've got a good animation. And that's pretty much how you use root motion. Sometimes it's a bit glitchy. Like if I take this second one and place it, there, it's not going to start from the new location, even though it's set to match it. It will actually reset itself. You'll sometimes have it where it'll reset itself and it'll jump back pretty much like that and keep just playing what normal animations do. And sometimes you do just have to come to it, right click, and just reselect the option again. That's a few bugs that I did have where it wasn't working properly. You reselect it, it works perfectly fine. But root motions for cutscenes and stuff is fantastic. The next thing I want to talk about is something that I found out with audio. There's two ways to technically play audio in the sequencer, and it entirely depends on how you want to use it. So on this initial bit here, he's walking on grass. So what I started doing was just timing the footsteps and placing it myself. Like that. And you can see I've put the 4 footsteps there. That works great, but you have to do it a lot. So as you can see when he's down here, every single footstep I've had to put in myself. Okay, it works. You could also do the typical thing if you follow any footstep tutorial, where it fires a line cast down on here, and if it hits a material, it plays a specific sound. That's another way you can do it. But I wanted full control in the sequence. I didn't want to have to keep clicking play to check if everything was working. It's not great. I wanted to limit that. The other way I found doing it, which was actually a lot easier, is if you just come to his animations, you can actually add notifiers to play the sounds directly in the editor. So you can see all I've done is right-clicked on the notify track, add notify and play sound. On this one, he's walking on wood. So I've just created a wood sound cue, which simply plays a bunch of different wood sounds. And then I timed it up in here and used it. And what you'll notice is if I jump to the other ones, I manually placed it on the first ones, but on the last one, there's no sounds at all. But because his footsteps have the sounds, you'll see it will play the sounds. Ignore the blood squirting sound. So it really depends on your scene. Like, if he was going to walk on some concrete for 2 seconds throughout the entire movie, I'll just manually place them in. Very, very small amount. But walking on dirt and wood, which he does throughout all of this scene and all the other ones he works on dirt, adding it to the animation is actually really, really nice. So this brings us on to my next new thing I found, and that's using the event track to play code, stuff you can't do in the sequencer, but you can actually tell some of them to actually work in the editor, and if the code you're running supports it, it will do it. So you'll see here a cheating way that I cut this guy's head off. So as I slice it, his head comes off, like so. I didn't actually have time to sit and cut his head off of the model, split it into 2, re-import it, make sure it's all rigged. So what I did instead is I created 2 models, the head and the body, exact same skeletal mesh. But what I did is I gave them both an animation blueprint with a bunch of booleans on it. So you can see here, I've got this semi setup here, and all it basically does is take whatever animation it's playing, resize the bones, whether it's the body or the neck, and then it outputs it. So for example, if he's had his head chopped off in the preview window, I'll tap off and it will basically shrink the head. That's all it does. You can still see it on this guy here. It's right there, look, and that's how it is. But with the blood squirting, you can't see it at all. Equally, if I come and said head only, then it shrinks the body and the neck, so it's really small, just keeping the head. And then, in the event graph here, if I double click my event, it basically gets the now spawned in body and head and sets the correct thing on the animation blueprint. Save me having to do 2 animation blueprint. But you'll notice it's actually running that code in the editor here. So you can see he's got a head, he spawns in, and his head is somewhere, and his body's somewhere else. And you can actually do that by right-clicking on the event and choosing Properties, Calling Editor. And that will actually make it execute in the editor. It doesn't work for everything, so you can't just make a whole gameplay scene in the editor. But for some things like just setting an animation blueprint, it works fantastic. So my next one is a super simple one. Did you know you can create folders in the sequencer? Like, if you look at how many cameras I've got here to do all the different shots, if I'm having to scroll up and down this all the time, it's going to be a nightmare. But you could just highlight a bunch of them and press Ctrl or Command G, or simply right-click, move to folder, add new folder. It's super simple, but it helps you keep everything organised, and then you can really just collapse it down. A nice simple tip. So the next tip is something that I kind of mix and matched with throughout the game, and that's when to use a blueprint actor in the scene and simply access its components, versus using static meshes and then just doing everything you need with it. And they both do have their benefits and disadvantages. So for example, my samurai here, you can see he is indeed a blueprint. That's what he is. And you can see everywhere he's come from because it's tracking everything, which is nice. But my bad guys over here are simple static meshes. Now, blueprints have some benefits, like you can put code on them and execute them directly if you really need to. But if you also hide it, it hides everything attached to it as well, which is very nice, because it's all self-contained. Whereas my bad guys here, like at the very start, I have to manually go and hide all aspects of them. So their weapon, their mask, their backpack, I have to hide each individual one, which is a big disadvantage of it. It is. However, another advantage of using just skeletal meshes is as they move, they're not leaving anything behind because they just exist. Whereas the samurai here, as he moves, capsule will be left behind as he's walking. So you can see it's actually right there, and I've had to glitchingly move him around. Now, this is the little bit I'm confused about, because I'm pretty sure that Epic claims root motion moves the capsule with it. Yes, as you can see, root motion moves the capsule. We've seen that I've got root motion enabled because the character moves, but yet in the sequencer, my capsule remains like I don't have root motion enabled. I don't know if I've glitchingly used it with, it's being buggy and I've got around it. I'm not sure, but I generally think it might be a bug that if I run this in the game and play it as a montage, I think the capsule will move with it because it's tracking it. But in the sequencer, I don't think it does. And you might think it's not too big of an issue, and it is and isn't depending on what you're going to do. But for example, say I have a scene here where the samurai stood there ready to attack. I need to teleport him to a location. So you can see he's there. I teleport him just a smidge right there, like so. But this actually insanely glitches out with the capsule. Because if I just move the capsule here, for example, if I take this samurai and say, oh, I just want to budge you a tiny bit forwards, I'm having to play with both figures at once, look. Because if I just move him there, he's now all the way over there. And I don't know what it is, because if I come and click the mesh is there. It's not over there. So do you see what I mean? It's a bit glitchy, but it has its huge benefits. So I did end up mixing and matching between using a blueprint and single actors. And my samurai's got a ton of equipment on him. He's got his sword, he's got his sheath, he's got his helmet. Each time I either moved him around or tried to hide him, I would have had to do all of it at once. So it was nice to have him as a single blueprint I can just put around. Versus these guys, they're only a one-time use thing. I didn't have to change all of it all at once. But that brings me on to the next point. So a bigger reason why you might want to differentiate between them. And that's a type of actor you're spawning. Whether this is a static, dynamic, or bindable actor. And this is something I found out which is just insanely useful for gameplay as well. So a static actor, if you look down here, is just ones you've placed in the scene. So I just drag him in the scene, like so, and I've used it in the sequencer. These are all static actors. They just always exist. However, they will always exist. So even when I'm on part 1 of the cutscene here, and I've got no need for them for part 1, part 2, part 3 until part 4, they're always there. Always. I'll have to handle that manually. Whereas a spawnable actor is one that the sequencer itself has full control over and will spawn it in. So my samurai, as you can see the little lightning bolt, is a spawnable actor. If I turn my sequence off, he disappears. He's not at the start. He's just completely gone because he's spawned by the sequencer. These guys are not spawned by the sequencer. And the main reason is they have attachments and they're skeletal meshes. If I make the body a spawnable actor, I'd have to make the hair and the sickle, or his weapon, and for all of them, spawnable actors, and then I'd have to handle attaching it all together, because if I spawn them in without attached all that together, so for example, if I come back to here at the start, if I convert this guy to a spawnable actor, so you can just right click, convert selected binding to spawnable actor, he'll lose his weapons and his hair. Meaning I'll have to come in and manually tell them to attach to one another. And that's a lot of work for a one-time actor who's just in the scene. If you were doing this part as a gameplay, you'd probably make him a blueprint in that case, because he's got a ton of stuff, he's spawnable, and that works. But with my samurai, it's so easy to switch him out. So for one instance, down here, you'll see I've actually got 2 samurais. There and there. And the reason is, I was having so many glitches with getting the samurai working for his smooth animations that I ended up just having to bin it off until the very end. Because no matter what I did, he would just not reset positions. So all I did was hide the samurai because he's a spawnable blueprint, and I spawned in the new one in the correct location. And because I've done it right on a camera hit, you'll see, you can't actually tell it's switched. So you can't tell it's switched actors, it just looks like a camera cut. But it actually is a completely different actor. And then it can just walk properly. So that's the benefit of spawnable actors. Now I did say there was 3, and that's bindable. Bindable, I can't honestly think why you'd use it in a cutscene only. Like, you know, a short movie, you pre-script it. But for gameplay, bindables are invaluable. Because they let you code in what actor is taking part of it. So for example, if I wanted to randomize this guy here, I'd set him as a bindable actor. And then when I call create level sequence player, I can set his name by a tag. So let's just have a quick go. So if I come to convert selected bindings, replaceable actor or bindable actor, some Unreal versions call it a different thing. But I will be able to give it a tag. So tags, open tag binding manager, and I can give him a new tag. And what that does is that I can then go replace bindable actor by tag. So I can use this function here, set binding by tag, and I basically search for the tag that I've set on the actor, and I can actively replace his entire body. It does limit you, so if you build this up here with an NPC, but then replace it with a car, you're going to struggle, it won't match up properly. So if you build it using one thing and replace it dynamically, it'll work really well. So that works really well. Really well if you want a cutscene that changes depending on your gameplay. So if you're part of the red faction, you can have it replace the enemies with blue faction members, all in the code. Meaning you don't have to create X amount of cutscenes for your different options. So the next thing we're going to talk about is something that is really basic, but I found out and it actually worked really well for my case, and that's camera shakes. You can add them directly in the sequencer. You don't need to code it in. So all you do is come to your camera, figure out whichever camera it is you actually need it on. Here we go. And you can click the little plus and add a camera shake. And it works a little bit different to what you think. You don't just start and stop it. You basically get given this draggable node thing. And if I focus on this camera, you'll see as it enters it, it will start shaking the camera. And then as it leaves, it will fade out. And it works really well for scenes where you want slashing motion. So if I come to a previous ones here, when it's about to slash, the camera will shake itself. And it adds a little bit more oomph to the attack, like you struck so hard, the camera's gone, whoa, kind of thing. You see it in a lot of videos where people are showing you how to improve your combat, add minor camera shake. So you can see as I send him against a bell and pull out, the camera shakes, and it just adds to it. But you can build it directly in the sequencer. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the time warping you can do. Now, I swear this wasn't in older Unreal versions. So it very well could be an Unreal 5.5, 5.6 thing. But I had a scene here where my animation was just too fast. But I needed it to be slower. So you'll see when it comes in here, he turns, he faces, and he walks off. That animation is like 2 seconds, 5 seconds long. It's not long enough. I was becoming motion sickness looking at my own animation. But you'll see, it's actually really slow here. And you can actually add time warps directly to animations and a ton of other things. So you'll see on the animation here, I've got a time track here. I've used play rate for mine, that's another option you can do. But you've equally got a time warp. If you drop it down, you've got time warp there, look. You can do time warp or a play rate. Play rate slows it down, time warp slows everything down. Which if you're doing an epic finisher, you might want the time warp to slow the entire scene down. Play rate just slows the animation down. But you can see here, on my play rate, I've got a bunch of keyframes to say, at this point, start at 0.5, so half your speed. And then here, I said slow down even more to 2.5, so the user can really see in the building. And then it looks around, and then it goes all the way back up to playing 1 again, so every other animation is in real time. It's a nice little thing, but sometimes you just need it. So we're on the 8th tip now. The next one is you can blend almost anything in the sequencer, which is really, really nice. So if you've got 2 animations, so you can see here, I've got an animation of walking there, but I need to go to an idle animation there. But I don't have an animation that bridges the gap. I have walking and I have idle. But what you can do with Unreal is if you just drag an animation on top of another one and move it backwards and forwards, you'll see it does this cross pattern here. You can also right click and choose what type of easing method it uses. I just kept it as default. But you'll see it'll take the animation there and it'll take the animation there and it'll join them together so it looks like he's faded in. If you do it really short, you'll see he quickly just snaps. It doesn't really have the effect. But if you draw it out over a long distance like this one, you'll see it kind of steps into it, which is a nice easing you can do for your animations to add to it. You could have also just camera cut into the position. The viewer wouldn't be any wiser. But if you are actively looking at it, you can just blend anything. Animations, I've blended sounds, because I didn't want it to just cut out. I wanted the animation, the sounds to blend together. So if I find my audio track on the bandit fight, you'll see here, at the start of the fight, when he's just looking around, I've got some peaceful Japanese music. But then as the bandits come in, I've blended the battle music and the peaceful one. And you see it's got the crossfade, and it basically just fades one out and fades one in. That's all it does, it's a crossfade. But as you heard, it kind of fades it in. Is it as good as if I had a proper music director who could masterfully mix it together? No, but I made this in a week as one guy. So it's really nice to have that. And because you can blend multiple things, you've also got the option to fade them out. So you can see my music faded out as I killed him. And really that probably should have been longer. I probably should have made that a bit longer, but never mind. And that also goes for cameras. But the only difference is with the cameras, which is really annoying, is you have to enable it. So by default, cameras will just cut. So you can see here, cut, that's it. Straight cut. So if you right click on your camera cuts and do can blend, you can see you can now do these type of easing functions like that, look. So as you can see, the camera moves up like that, it blends to the other one. Another blend, look. Versus the quick ones that you swap between them. You see it all the time in movies. Sometimes it moves properly, other times it snaps. It's fine, they both work. But that is really nice to enable, and you can just drag the length of it to make it any longer or shorter than you need. And don't forget, you can always right click and do options and choose specific ones if you want it to play different. Now the final one I'm going to show you is a super simple one, but I ended up using far more than I thought I would. And that's just the state of the animation. So you'll see I've got this animation here. I have this animation here of the bad guy dying, right? So he dies, he fumbles over, he's like, blah, 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 you know, he dies. Typical me falling on the floor and hitting my head fashion. But what happens when his animation stops? You'll see that after that, it disappears and he comes back. Well, that's not going to look very good, not very good at all. And you'll see he actively does it in the scene, which completely ruins the illusion. So you could come and have an animation of him just laying on the floor and repeat it over and over again, but it may look a bit glitchy. But the other option is you can change the state of it and say, after you finish, do this. So if you simply right click on your animation, your sound, your transform, anything, properties, you've got this when finished. If you set this to keep state, it will basically remember the last thing it did and just stay there. So you'll see now if I play the animation, he's shaking and then he stops. And he just stays there because he's dead. He doesn't need to move. But he will just stay there for the rest of the scene. It's so useful to have that feature so you don't have to keep doing it. And like I say, it works with transforms too. So if you right click on your transform track, properties, I've also done the same here. Because after his transform finished, he was going very back to the beginning. So he was all the way over there. And with the animation, where I've had to specifically change his location to make it work, so you can see his location's there, over there. So I change his location depending on what he's doing. He's still over there. We don't want that changing and resetting. So you can keep the state of it. So there are the 10 biggest things I learned when doing the sequencer. There are of course tons of more things I've learned about cinematography, particle effects, but these are the 10 that I feel that would make the absolute most beneficial thing to you. To make your cutscenes a bit easier, your sequences, your short films. So thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this helped. Have you got any other tips that you'd love to share? Let me know in the comments below because we can all learn from it. Thanks for watching. My name is Decryption and I will see you next time.